It's Cash Color Cannabis, a high level of conversation on Livehiphopdaily. And this episode is presented by Jade's Elevation. Established April 20th in Memphis, Tennessee, Jade's Elevation is a small family urban farm that focuses on providing the best hemp products from seed to experience. Learn more about their amazing products and all their services they offer for farmers at jadeselevation.com. All right, without further ado, I'm ready to get this week started. I mean, man, so much nervousness in the news, man. I wasn't sure if anybody was going to come outside.
This thing is like going crazy. Can't shake hands no more.
Let me tell you this. This is the first time I've actually been outside the house. To be honest with you, and especially downtown. And when I got downtown today, I was like, "Yo, did they shut downtown down and didn't tell nobody?" It was like there's nothing outside. It was weird, man. It's like you would have think people wouldn't be so scared. It's like consider Corona the trap of all viruses, man. I think it just have a bad reputation right now. But who knows? Couple weeks it might be popular. But speaking of trap, I got my good guest in the building, man. My man AR Shaw. AR, what's up, man?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me, man. I've been watching your movement and the things that you're doing, so I'm really excited to be a part of this.
Oh, appreciate it, man. Well, I consider cannabis is trap, man. It's definitely trap. And we get the chance to talk today with you about trap history. You working on an amazing project and book and podcast in which you take a deep dive into trap history overall, not just the music, but aspects from everything from gentrification to strip club culture. Talk about a lot of things that actually all fall in line with trap history. So I did want to have a chance to get to talk to you about the book and just everything that you found out about trap since you started working it out there. But first, before we get started, man, state your name and tell us what you do.
So I'm AR Shaw. Born and raised in Atlanta, an Atlanta native.
Okay.
There's not too many of us still around.
I was going to say, so you're an actual Grady baby?
Grady baby.
Yeah.
Went to Grady High School. Shout out to Grady High School. Went to Georgia State University. So my Atlanta experience is real Atlanta. I'm like, you're going to get more Atlanta than me. So like from birth to right now, So I'm a journalist by trade. I've been in the journalism field for over a decade. Covered sports, covered politics, business, anything business related. So I've pretty much, just been someone who's experienced culture, witnessed culture, and I decided to document culture in my new book, which is Trap History, which is right here for those.
It's right. We're gonna show y'all a little bit later in case you can't see right now.
Yeah.
But that's what's up, man. And me as a journalist myself, I consider myself a journalist since I was in high school. It was my first written story.
Okay.
And it's crazy because I first got into journalism watching 60 Minutes with my mom and dad.
Okay.
Like I used to sit there, like to this moment, Ed Bradley is the coolest dude I've ever seen in my life, and I had a chance to meet him.
Oh wow,
bro! If you have a chance to meet an old black man with an earring in his ear, he was just cool.
He was cool, and he did his work, man.
Hell
he
yeah,
was thorough.
And I thought that was the coldest thing about it because at that same time I was into the sources and all that. So I remember Elliot Wilson's and all them reading all them, but really it was Ed Bradley that made me be like. That's what I wanted to do. Did you have a model like that made you want to say that, I could be a writer and it's not like some lame stuff?
No, I mean, I think the thing is, man, it was like, what's so crazy? My first byline was in the 4th grade. And I kind of remember that I wrote an article about 2 Live Crew when they were banned.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. I wrote an article in 4th grade. I was 10 years old. I was like I was on the editorial staff. So all of my pieces were editorial. It wasn't news related. So I wrote a piece about 2 Live Crew and censorship. This is in the 4th grade, man. So that was my first byline.
That's crazy.
So just witnessing life, man. I think everybody they're a writer, but do you have the patience and the discipline to do it consistently?
Yeah.
Because it's work. Like you really have to put your time in to really be successful at this trade.
Yeah.
So for me, it was just continuing to once you figure out that you're good at something, you kind of like try to keep doing it. So.
Yeah, and being in Atlanta, you had a chance to kind of tackle a wide range of subjects, like you say, from politics to sports to music culture.
Yeah, for sure.
Who are some of your favorite subjects, and what are some of your favorite subjects? To tackle since you got into being a professional journalist?
It's been different. It's been different moments at different times. I think being able to cover Barack Obama's journey to the White House. Like I was covering him before he actually got into the White House, and I actually got a chance to go to the White House several times, and I was able to cover some events at the White House that him and Michelle Obama had. So I mean, just being like, I think just growing up, you never think that you will go to the White House. It's you know it exists, but it's kind of like Mars. You're like, yeah, it exists, but I probably would never go there.
We ain't gonna see no black president.
Yeah, you're never gonna see a black president. And I'm like, wow, like I think that moment for me was like, man, like I'm in a White House with a black president. He has a black wife. Like this is just like something I would have never imagined to ever have experienced, and to be able to like work it and to write about it was definitely like one of the high points for me.
That's what's up. Every bit of me would have tried to smoke a joint up in the White House. Bro. Everything in me, everything that you just ran down would have gave me that reason to do it. Like this probably be the first and last time this ever happened. So let me just go ahead and take this L for the team.
Do it.
So that's what's up, man. Well, let's get to the nitty gritty, man. Because when I saw you on Day One Radio, and shout out to Brandon and shout out to Maurice,
for sure.
When you were talking about the trap history, I was in there fascinated, man, because I never really thought about it. And I'm cool with admitting this. I never really thought about trap past the music, past the growing up. You know what I mean? Like, because I mean, looking at it even now, especially after seeing the clips from your book and just kind of listening to your interviews, I've actually grew up in a trap. You know, I never even thought about it. You know what I mean?
Think about it, right?
I never thought about it. I grew up in a trap. I grew up in a trap environment. I grew up around trap influences, and trap influences influenced me. You know what I mean? Let's talk about trap history. What made you want to tackle such a broad subject and put it into black and white like that?
Because it's like, I think just like you, I think the average person when they hear trap music, it's like, oh, it's just music. It's fun. We can turn up to it, get lit to it, whatever. And they don't really think about, like, I guess where it comes from. No. And then so I think for me, and I was telling Maurice and Brandon this, that for me, it kind of woke my eyes up when I was in London covering the Olympics, like 2012. And this woman, this young woman, said that they had this thing at the club called Trap Night. And for me, it was like, what, Trap Night in London? I'm just like, okay, what do you mean? So at that point, I'm like, okay, this is bigger than just an Atlanta thing. It's bigger than the USA. It's a worldwide thing. And so I was like, okay, how many people really know what the trap is? For the average person, trap is basically a slang term in Atlanta that's been around since like the early 90s, late 80s. And it's basically what you call, like, this is the place where people bought and sold drugs. But at the same time, people actually people lived in those places, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's a lot of, people who, I wanted to kind of put a face to it, kind of like give it some, these are real human beings that's happening. Like, so the thing is, I think when it comes to like music, it's easy to kind of distance yourself from the actual experience. So I wanted people to actually experience what this music comes from, instead of just like listening to it passively. Like, these are actually things that are actually happening in certain communities. Yeah,
it really is, man. And from your take on it, what do you feel like people miss the most when we speak about trap, or when they think about trap? Because again, you probably think music, you know what I mean? You might think even fashion, but there's people live in the Bluffs, you know what I'm saying? Like people still live in Vine City, and that's a real thing. Like there are people who are they remember the Red Dogs, you know what I'm saying?
Man, Red Dog.
Yeah, like they remember the Red Dogs. They remember when it was really a trap. So what do you feel like people miss the most?
So we got to kind of give people context, because I know you have like viewers worldwide.
Oh yeah.
So Red Dog is basically a police task that was set up in the late 80s to kind of combat the drug dealers and the drug gangs that was going on in the projects in the late 80s. So they created this police force called Red Dog, and Red Dog stands for Run Every Drug Dealer Out of Georgia.
Funny story. The black dude it was a black dude who helped start Red Dogs.
Yeah.
And he taught me how to shoot.
Oh,
he taught me how to shoot when I first got down here. One of my jobs was security, and he was charged of teaching us how to actually. And he used to brag about it. He's like, "Man, look, we used to go up in them doors.
Man, they would kick in doors. Man, they were ruthless.
Yeah, he was ruthless. So,
they were ruthless, man. And so, and I put this in the book too. Basically, with the Red Dog, it was like he was trying to mirror the Red Dog defense. Was basically, for people who know about football, Red Dog, the defense is basically the Red Dog blitz. It's basically an all blitz. It's like we sending everybody in at the quarterback. And so that was basically their whole scheme, was they wanted to kind of blitz the drug dealers, try to hit them, when they least expect it, come in at 4 or 5 in the morning, kicking in doors. And
You got me thinking of Goody Mob right now. They got everybody on their hands.
Man, I'm telling you, Dirty South. I'm telling you, man. So it's like all this stuff is documented in music, but it's like people might not understand where it came from.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of giving people like, okay, you listen to Dirty South, and this is what Cool Breeze is actually talking about. They kicking indoors, and they got everybody down on their hands and knees, and they trying to find something.
Yeah.
And so that was my whole thing, is really just to kind of break down this whole thing about what was happening in the inner cities of Atlanta.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about in your book you actually point out several different areas of influence when it comes to trap history.
Yeah.
There's the BMF era, there's strip club eras, there even Migos era of culture. So let's start with one that I definitely remember, which was the BMF era, man.
Oh man.
How influential was Meech in the BMF era to what we see now as trap, and being understand what trap is right now, music, culture, and all that?
Yeah, so the thing about like Meech and the BMF era, so that came, like that whole era was like when I was in college. So I actually got a chance to kind of see what was going on. Like they were in the clubs, like throwing, man, so much money.
Yeah.
It was just crazy. Like these dudes would be in a section, and it's like, if you were trying to holler at somebody, don't even think about it at night, because they had everybody. Like they had all, like they pretty much controlled the atmosphere.
Yeah.
You got talking about 50 to 100 dudes deep wearing black shirts, BMF on it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like they came in and they made they made a statement. Mm. They put a stamp on, like, this is who we are. This is what it is. And I think Jeezy, a lot of like they there was some type of affiliation with Jeezy, and I think they were friends, Meech and Jeezy, and so a lot of the stuff that he was rapping about, like they were living it. So you kind of got a chance to see this whole thing play out early 2000s, and it's kind of like, man, it kind of from a criminal aspect, it kind of they had the feds watching, but from a music and entertainment standpoint, it really branded Atlanta in a specific way.
It did, and I feel like, again, when we start thinking about the term trap, because I didn't think about it personally, but when you think about the term trap, they didn't just brand Atlanta; they branded the term trap. Like you would walk in there, and everywhere that BMF went, they turned it into what they understood. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it could be someplace like it could be from Justin's.
Yeah.
It could be to the club they had. It could be the Lenox Mall. If this aesthetic was one way, then by the time we get in here, what you're gonna understand is what we do. You know what I'm saying? And that's what they really did a great job at.
Yeah. Now, I mean, marketing and branding, I think, besides the illegal activity, I think, but it was like, I think at that, people, although they were from Detroit, the brothers were from Detroit, they came down to Atlanta, and then they had people from New York and LA, like, wow, these boys down south are really getting money. Like, before then, like, people didn't really see Atlanta as a city like that, where just like, you didn't see it. No. We saw it because we were growing up, but it's like, you didn't see that, like, these young guys were like millionaires at a young age and just spending crazy. So from that standpoint, it kind of put Atlanta on the map.
Yeah, man. And they also have put a strip club culture on the map, as far as I'm concerned, because I've to this moment, it's crazy, I have not been to Magic City.
Bro.
Don't look at me like that, but I just
how's that possible?
I haven't been. I've been outside plenty of times.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been to the Greyhound station. That's the trap.
That's the real trap,
I've been to the Greyhound station. That is most certainly the trap.
Yeah.
But I've never been inside Magic City. But Magic City is definitely a huge part of trap culture.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to strip club culture.
Yeah.
Speak to strip club culture and what that means to trap culture.
Yeah, so I got a chance to speak to the owner of Magic City years ago, Mr. Barney, and we actually talked about, like, how some of the strippers pretty much helped the rappers. And this was probably before Atlanta pretty much became known as a city of rappers and entertainers. Yeah. Like in the 80s, you had a lot of bass artists like Kilo Ali, Raheem the Dream, Hitman Sammy Sam.
Yeah.
And they would get their songs played in the strip clubs because, every stripper, they had to have a song that they came out to. And, so they broke a lot of music. They were like the first A&Rs down south with the strippers in the strip club DJs, because they were the ones who were breaking the new music. You would hear the music there first, because back then we had View 103, but View 103 was an R&B station. They only had one night where they played hip hop. That was the Friday night mix. That was one night. and so the rest of the week they was all R&B. So the only way that a rapper could pretty much get his music out, he had to go to the strip clubs and go to the skating rinks. So they were like the first people who were like breaking the artists. So that kind of went hand in hand. And so once it became that the rappers began to kind of show that lifestyle in videos and things of that nature.
Yeah, that's it's so deep how trap culture itself is very, very, very deep. Even when you just mentioned Kilo Ali and them, I would think that actually would they be the precursors to what we call trap music right now? Like they were the early trappers or trap rappers, I guess.
I think you could probably say like Hitman Sammy Sam. Hitman Sammy Sam was probably like the first hardcore rapper from Atlanta. Kilo Ali had a song called Cocaine, which was people. If you don't know Kilo Ali, go to YouTube and Google and type in search for cocaine. And it was basically he talked about it was a crazy story about someone who falls in love with the drug game and like the repercussions of it. So it wasn't really trap music at the time. It had like from a sound standpoint, it was bass music, but from a lyrical standpoint and the storytelling, it was kind of a precursor to trap music.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
Yeah,
that's so crazy. And, and now we're looking at it as far as how music represents the trap.
Yeah.
Migos have come to be the face of this. And I thought, I thought you made a good point when you had in your chapter about Migos, the culture album, and what that means. Yeah. Speak to us about that. Like, what do you feel like Migos mean to what we know as trap right this second?
I think what Migos did. I think Migos' future, I think that next wave, that next generation of trap after T.I., Jeezy, and Gucci, I think what they did is they made it mainstream more so. Like Migos are rock stars right now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like they're in a space where they're playing like large festivals and they're in these big arenas and doing these concerts. And so I think for them, they kind of kept it alive, kept this next generation alive. And I think what we were talking about with the other podcasts is that Atlanta has had several music genres. We had crunk music, we had snap music, and for a minute we had futuristic swag. And then
futuristic swag.
Futuristic swag.
J Money, first name, last name.
That's right, J Money. So Atlanta had a few subgenres to come and go.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that made trap music stand out more so and kind of survive is that you had like these young guys who were kind of keeping it alive and doing their own interpretations of it. And so Migos come out like around 2012, 2013, and then they have a few hits, and then Bad and Bougie comes, and then Donald Glover shots them out at the Golden Globe Awards. And after that moment, it was like that was it.
Yep.
Because now you got white Hollywood, like who are the Migos? And so after that point, you got these people, everybody's Googling who the Migos are, the average person who don't know them. So I think that pretty much took them to a point where they were, at this point, they weren't no longer just trap artists or rap artists, they were pop artists at this point.
Yeah. Well, they helped what I feel like, they helped trap jump the shark because trap jump the shark at this point. And I'll give you an example. I pull a lot of my pictures from Pinterest whenever I'm doing stuff, right? Okay. And on Pinterest, they'll have several different categories. And what blew my mind one day was trap aesthetic category on Pinterest.
Oh, wow.
And if you ever take a stroll down the trap aesthetic category on Pinterest, you'll notice that it don't look like anything we're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of suburban kids, it's like who kind of dress in a type of way and holding guns like this or fake guns in their hands. It's this is what trap aesthetic is to them.
Wow.
Yeah, that's where we're at.
Wow.
That is definitely where we're at.
Wow.
How do you feel about watching where we see trap going now, especially commercially, where it's no longer just simply T.I. talking about growing up in Bankhead. It's now I can go to the mall and go get a whole trap outfit apparently, or I can go get some trap sneakers, or at my favorite, put trap in front of anything. It's now a thing. We got trap yoga, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Trap choreography, like this trap aesthetic is a real thing. How do you feel about watching trap go mainstream?
So I try to, with this book, I try to tie in a lot of like historical moments, and so I talk about rock and roll, right?
Yeah.
So, do you know where rock and roll come from? Like
rock and roll itself?
Just the term rock and roll.
The term, no.
So the term rock and roll, and I put this in the book, was the first time it was ever put on a record was in 1917 by a woman from Atlanta named Trixie Smith. She was a blues artist.
Okay.
And she was that was the first reference to rock and roll was 1917 by a black artist named Trixie Smith. And so rock and roll was basically a slang term in the black community for sex. That's what rock and roll was.
Let's rock and roll.
Let's rock and roll. That's what it was in the black community. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And so over time, you get it changes, and all of a sudden it becomes a genre. But what's associated with rock and roll right now?
Of course.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like you see how things change over time.
It's also crazy how words get interpreted, because I remember reading in Russell Simmons' book, Life After Death, he talks about when he first met Rick Rubin.
Yeah.
Rick Rubin thought Def Jam was Death Jam.
Yeah.
And he thought it was just like this loud metal and all this other stuff. He said, "No, it's just it's just us three."
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
Def, DEF.
Yeah.
You know how people kind of reinterpret words and stuff like that sometimes, man. So it's crazy.
So back to the point is basically like, you take something like rock and roll and it becomes something else. Trap can start in a place and it can become something else. And so that's why I got this book, because it's like at this point you say trap aesthetics, where it's like suburban kids with guns. You really need to know the history before it gets out of hand. Before it's like, oh yeah, trap started
in Iowa back when this dude serious, like, go on Pinterest and see how many people with neon face mask and like it's something totally not what I thought it would have been at all.
Yeah. So over time we can people interpret things over time, and they change it, and it can become something.
Yeah.
Look at house music.
Yeah.
And how house music has been reshaped to EDM music. But house music is black. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's.
Yeah.
So that's my whole thing, is really to like have some context to it, so people can know that this is where it started.
And I'm glad you spoke about that, about house being really EDM and the origins, even rock and rolls. Do you feel like we should be taking more ownership of trap, as far as like our community, black community? Like, we should take more ownership and more pride of trap music, trap lifestyle, culture, all that?
Well, it just depends on what you're celebrating. For me, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't really like glorifying the dealers. I wasn't glorifying the artists.
Yeah.
I wanted to really tell a story, because it's like you can get to a point where it's like, okay, yeah, you want to, this is what these artists did, but at the same time, there's real pain behind what they're talking about.
Yeah.
There's real trauma. There's real mental health issues.
Speaking of.
And so, these are people who are dealing with this stuff on a day-to-day basis. And so we don't really tackle those issues, and it's like, what are we really celebrating?
Yeah.
My thing is, I don't mind us embracing what it is and what it's, certain aspects of what it stands for, but you should know what it stands for, and that people are still dealing with these issues. It's not just something that you can like, and I talk about like the Pink Trap House. When I went to the Pink, do you remember the Pink Trap House, right? Mm-hmm. 2 Chainz a couple years ago. And I met these 2 young women. I think they were from like Colombia or somewhere. And they were just like, they were like, having fun, taking pictures in front of it or whatever. And they were smiling. I'm like, but I was like talking to them. I was like, do you know what a real trap is? And they're like, no. What is, they didn't really understand it. So for them, it's just like, it's a pink trap house. This is fun. So
it's the Pinterest to them.
You know what I'm saying? This is fun. So my thing is to if we're gonna highlight and brand it and kind of have it as our own, still we need to deal with all aspects of it, not just one aspect.
I like how you mentioned it. You mentioned it in your book as well about the mental aspects. Mental health, I definitely connect trap music and trap culture with Gucci Mane. Yeah. And when I say that, I don't mean just the music. I mean everything this man went through. You know what I'm saying? Down to his own mental breakdowns and some of the stuff he dealt with, just probably half of it dealing with street life. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Speak to us about the mental aspect, and what made you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so in the chapter, I have a chapter called Mental Health and Trap Music. Mm-hmm. And basically what I talk about, excuse me, is like we kind of seeing how trap changed, right? Like, in the beginning, like with T.I., Gucci, Jeezy, they were talking about selling the drugs, right? And then years later, you have artists talking about using. Yeah. So it's like, okay, how do we go from selling to being like the addicts? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, what happened? Like, what changed to make us go from, okay, we want to make a lot of money to save our families, to now we're so depressed that we have to become the addicts. Yeah. And so I wanted to kind of touch on that, like, these guys are really going through mental health issues. You know, why are you sipping lean all day? You know what I'm saying? Why are you popping pills?
Why are you smoking weed all day? Like I feel like at some point you need to start taking consideration why we're doing things.
Yeah. I think, anything that that's not done in moderation can become an addiction. Yeah. And what are you trying to hide? What are you trying to mask? So that was my whole thing, is to like, if we really deal with what they're talking about. If a guy says, I'm sipping lean, this is what I'm doing, it's an effect to that. And Gucci talked about it in his book. He talked about how, he was addicted to lean for a while, and it kind of messed his health up. And I guess once he went to jail, he was able to kind of cleanse himself, because he wasn't around it anymore. But that was my whole thing, is to really let's understand where these problems are rooted. Instead of just saying, okay, yeah, let's have fun or whatever. But no, these people are really dealing with traumatic situations.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, really. I mean, we deal with street dudes deal with PTSD. Like, if you are dealing with a constant basis of from red dogs and police chasing you down to enemies that you have on the streets, and just we're watching people medicate through a lot of problems, man, and that is trap life. Yeah. But and it's just sad, you know what I mean? Because again, watching Gucci, I've watched Gucci really grow into I feel like a better version of himself. But the person that helped popularize it, that was an unhealthy human being. You know what I mean? That was a very mentally, I'm pretty sure he'll tell you, mentally and physically, he was a very unhealthy person. Yeah,
and I think in the, historically in the black community, I think we don't really want to talk about mental health, and are we really seeking counseling? Do we even have enough money to counsel? Do we even know what it takes to go to counseling? Do we know who should we call? I don't even know if those things are really talked about in our community as it should be. So you have kids who grow up and they it's this thing called black don't crack, but it's we still enduring things internally. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That we're not really talking about, that we're not really discussing, and it's coming out in different areas, in different ways. And my whole thing is just to kind of let's really have these discussions and not be afraid to have these discussions.
I agree. And black does crack. We need to stop stereotyping ourselves. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Especially from the inside. Mentally, we can crack like anybody else, dog. And check that. And thinking about Gucci's and even, definitely T.I.'s and Jeezy's, we watched them all come up from, 4X large T-shirts to becoming these business moguls now. Do you feel like we're reaching back, or do you feel like artists are reaching back enough to kind of help these new artists understand where trap is coming from and how they can actually help them avoid pitfalls versus just letting them go through the same situations we went through or some of the artists went through?
Well, I mean, I think, like I said, I can't really speak for the artists themselves. Yeah. I mean, I see T.I. doing a lot of things in the community. He's leading by example. He's doing things with, you'll see him at the Trap Museum, and then he's still doing things from a political standpoint. He has a thing about voting and things of that nature. So a lot of people can see him, and he can be an example in some aspects. But as far as I don't really know, as far as are they reaching? I don't really know what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. From what I'm seeing, but a lot of times you have young guys who come up, and when you're young, you just want to do it your way. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So sometimes you can't even really reach them, because it's they got this whole thing in their whole mind, and they want to kind of do it their way. Yeah. So but hopefully, my whole thing with this book is just not even for artists, but just people who live in those areas, that they can know that there's a way out, and not to really embrace those ideas moving forward, that you can kind of see what happened, so that you won't have to go through the same things.
Got it, man. So when's the book going to be ready?
Well, the book is actually ready, but it's I'm still doing some type of some promotions, things of that nature. We're looking at April. Hopefully, this Corona thing don't go too crazy.
We can't talk the trap virus of the times right now.
You know what I'm saying? So hopefully the Corona doesn't go too crazy. I'm thinking about some type of mid to late April for a release and then release party. So I want to do this thing big. I have a short documentary that I'm doing also an audio documentary that's going to like coincide with the book.
Yeah, and speaking of that, the podcast, what is just gonna? Do you feel like is that something that's just gonna go along with the book, or is it gonna be something that's gonna kind of live on? Like, is it a monthly thing you're gonna keep doing?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I'm gonna roll it out. I may just put it out at the same time as the book, or I may just roll it out like week by week basis. Haven't really figured it out, but most of I have like six chapters done already from the audio documentary. So I'm just like right now seeing how we're gonna like push it out there.
That's
but it's basically like it's the storytelling aspects of what's in the book.
Yeah. That's what's up, man. Well, one of the stories I would love for you to, I love that is the neighborhoods, gentrification.
Oh man, yeah.
Gentrification, because right now we're in a situation where even where we're at right now in Castleberry, we're not too far from a trap. To be completely honest with you, that trap that was made popular by a man who actually helped gentrify it, I feel, which is Curtis Snow. You know what I mean? Curtis Snow. I think that people don't fully get how we transform our own communities by making stuff popular before we can own it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like Curtis Snow's popularity of Snow on the Bluff had people down in the bluff taking like random pictures and you know what I mean, and noticing that houses cost like $1. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And saying let's go grab up everything we can.
Oh man.
Yeah. How do you feel about we're in the middle of a trap right now currently, but that trap is being totally turned into something else, from the hotels down the street to Phillips to the arena, the stadiums, all this, man. What's the positive here for that?
For gentrification?
Yeah, what's the positive?
I don't know if there's any positives, man, because in the book I go to Kirkwood and I talk about Future and I
another place that's that doesn't even look the same.
Kirkwood is over. Yeah, so just to give people context, in 1990 you probably could have got a house in Kirkwood for like $30,000 to $40,000 easily. Now they have houses in Kirkwood for like $1 million.
Bro, they got the HG houses.
Yeah, like it's insane. And it's to like, I remember just riding through Kirkwood and I'm just like, in those houses, like they was dirt cheap. Mm-hmm. So now it's like seeing what's happening over there now and what's happening here, even like in Castleberry. Like, my thing is this, man. I think the young guys who are coming up, young men and women coming up, they need to try to buy as much land as possible, buy as much property as possible, and hold on to it. Speak to your relatives, grandma and them, your aunts and your uncles who have homes in the city. Yeah, don't sell. Just hold on to these properties, because at a certain point it's going to be so high that people like me and you won't be able to get in. We won't have a presence. So yeah, that's my whole thing, is just to like do what we can to buy as much property as possible.
But you know what, brother? I love the fact that you're taking on such a wide story, and you're taking on such a what I feel like is an important story. That being a historian like this is needed. You know what I mean? Because this is a story that could easily get co-opted. It has been. Again, I can bring up Pinterest all day. Yeah, it's been co-opted. Trust me, man. So what's next for you?
Man, next is really just, making sure that we get as many people to know about the book. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because like you say, man, my thing is, I think Atlanta is like we're in the midst of like our generation's version of a Harlem Renaissance. Yeah. And I think so much talent is coming out of here. I think so much music, arts, and culture is coming out of Atlanta that, from years from now, people are going to be writing about Atlanta. I don't think this is going to be the last book about trap music, but I wanted to be the first one to kind of tell the story like, yo, this is what trap was. This is what trap music was. This is where it came from. And so it's written by a black man. It's written by someone who's from Atlanta, who was born and raised in Atlanta, who saw the whole thing transpire. Yeah. So it's like you really getting a firsthand look at where it comes from. So yeah, so that's So that's what it is, man. So that's my whole thing, man, is to get as many people to know about it as possible. I want people to be informed about it and just to check it out, man. Like, it's right now, you can pre-order the book on traphistory.com. Yes, sir. And just check it out, man, because I think
the cover's dope too. Like it's the gold teeth, man. Like you just give me a whole lot of Jeezy vibes. Like I'm thinking Gold Mouth and stuff like that, man.
Yeah.
A lot of good vibes, bro.
Yeah. So that's what it is, man. I not like that's my whole thing, is really just to get it out there. Yeah. I want to go to different cities and kind of introduce it to different cities, but first, just to let people know that it exists.
Well, I think it'll definitely work in different cities because it's not like there's a trap everywhere. Like I said, being from Boston, I'm looking like thinking about it when I was thinking about coming over here. Yeah, I grew up in a trap.
Yeah,
you go to Chicago, you are going to traps. You go to LA, you know what I mean?
But trap is worldwide. You can find some form of, whether it's the physical trap or the music in every continent around the globe. You got trap music in Mexico. You got trap music in Africa.
Yeah.
As Asian trap music. So, this is a worldwide thing, man. So it's like, and it started in Atlanta, in a city that's not that big.
Yeah.
So my whole thing is really just to highlight where it came from, highlight the culture.
Yeah, it's one of Atlanta's exports, man.
It is.
Cultural exports, trap music.
It is, man.
Yeah.
It is.
That's what it is, man. Bro, I really appreciate you coming through tonight and hanging out with us, man.
No.
Before we get out of here, let them know again where they can at least learn some more about the book when it's ready, how they can go ahead and make sure they can grab it, and any other ways they can support it.
Oh, yeah. So, just go to traphistory.com right now. You can support the book. You can pre-order it right now. It's ready. Doing a party in April, late April, to kind of for the book release party to celebrate the release of it. You can follow me on Instagram at arshaw23. That's ARSHAW 23. On Twitter at arshaw and Facebook arshaw. Just follow the movement and just support and tell a friend to tell a friend.
Guys, that's what we're definitely going to do tonight, man. We're going to make sure we tell all our friends to make sure they pick up trap history.
For sure.
And that's Cash Color Cannabis, a high level of conversation, sponsored by Jay's Elevation.